They blocked off 8th Street, and there is a huge police presence here just in case protesters showed up. But instead, they had no Proud Boys, but hundreds of supporters. And this fire was persistent. They were using about 5,000 gallons of water to fight this fire per minute, and yet it still continued for hours. The crowds keep growing and growing here at the Supreme Court. Some people got here, listen to this, at 11 a.m. yesterday. It was incredibly emotional inside there. Various members of the College Park community were inside, including his husband and his mother. And when the decision was read, they both started crying. I can tell you right now, I just looked at the board. It's not the sea of red that we saw yesterday. We're talking about Virginia House Bill 1707. I've got it right here in my hands. And the bill's sponsor says the argument for this bill is simple. Parents should be involved. The visuals were dramatic and unusual because of the explosion, but neighbors say that the crashes in general are not unusual. So far this year, 5 people have lost their lives in fires in Montgomery County. In fact, that all happened within a 24-day period. Montgomery County Fire and Rescue tells us that that's usually about as much as they see in a full year. Whose idea was this, to let me be this close to a yellow Lambo? Or this multi-million-dollar Bugatti? No way I'm touching this. Or this Rolls Royce, which costs about the same as my condo. We're here at the Washington, D.C. Auto Show, where we're getting a sneak peek at all these cars.
Our Evan Koslof is live at the Capitol to break it all down. And Evan, you reached out to all of our local senators to ask them how they'll vote.
Right, and at this time, they're actually pretty split right now. The 2 Maryland senators said that they believe that local legislation should be decided by local leaders. However, the 2 Virginia senators told me that they would actually support that Senate resolution to overturn the D.C. law. It's a local issue that's very quickly become a national one.
The messaging got out of our control.
D.C. Council Chair Phil Mendelson announcing on Monday that they'd be withdrawing the controversial D.C. Revised Criminal Code Act. But that's not stopping the Senate vote on Wednesday.
Washington is different from any other city in America.
Republicans like Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell have blasted the bill as a threat to public safety.
We need to have a reasonable expectation of security here in the Capitol.
The bill was headed to the president's desk, and the president made a decision.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre saying on Monday that Biden would sign the resolution overturning the D.C. law. Here she was going into greater detail on Friday.
Because D.C. is not a state, when bills like this occur, it goes to the president, and he has to make a decision. And that's where we are. It's as simple as that.
Meanwhile, a split among our local senators. Maryland Senators Ben Cardin and Chris Van Hollen have said they'd vote against the Senate resolution. Van Hollen saying, quote, "I support the right of the people of the District of Columbia to self-determination and full democracy." But a different story for our Virginia senators. Senator Mark Warner told the Washington Post that he'd support the resolution, as did Senator Tim Kaine, who took our questions yesterday afternoon.
I'm a strong believer in home rule. I'm a believer in D.C. statehood. But the fact of the matter is, there are certain kinds of laws that if D.C. passes, we can't duck them. They come to Congress, and we're asked to express an opinion.
And back out here live at the Capitol, we did also reach out to Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton, who's the sole representative in Congress for D.C. She was unavailable for an interview, but she wrote the following when the resolution was announced, writing, "Today has been a sad day for D.C. home rule and D.C. residents' right to self-governance." Again, that vote is going to be today inside the Capitol. As soon as we have the results, we'll pass them along. Reporting here at the Capitol, I'm Evan Koslof, WUSA 9. It's rare to put out a request to 2 high-ranking senators from opposing parties to do a joint interview and then have them just immediately say yes.
We actually are really good friends.
Don't tell anybody.
2 senators finding a bond over an issue that, for them, supersedes politics.
Alzheimer's doesn't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican or a socialist or an independent.
Both of them have lost a parent to this terrible disease.
This is my mom. She had Alzheimer's for 11 years.
This is a picture of my father, Don Collins. To see this awful disease rob him of his mind was really horrible.
The 2 are co-leaders of the Congressional Alzheimer's Task Force and are pushing their colleagues to reauthorize the National Alzheimer's Project.
I rise in strong support of S3036.
This was formed in 2011, bringing together top scientific experts to coordinate a national response to the disease. It's set to expire in 2025 and needs to be reauthorized soon.
There really is no investment that pays better dividends to the American people than our funding of biomedical research.
The pair is also supporting another bill, which would require the director of the NIH to submit an annual budget, estimating the necessary amount of funding to fully implement that panel's goals. Do you think people should have hope that we could find a cure and a treatment in our lifetime?
I think you've got to have that hope, because otherwise the challenges are so debilitating. We wouldn't be still doing this if we didn't have hope. And listen, we're in a business that if you don't have hope, it's a pretty crummy business. So on this one, we got hope.
I agree.
So there's no doubt that we live in a polarized time, but when this Alzheimer's project was formed in 2011, it actually passed through both chambers by a unanimous vote. Collins and Warner are hopeful that we're going to see something similar this time around. And you know, guys, if we continue at this rate, some 13 million people would be impacted by this disease by 2050. That's a lot of people, and my family was one of them. I'm actually wearing an old tie of my dad's right here.
Oh, my goodness.
He passed away just over a year ago. So a lot of people impacted, and each of them has a really devastating story.
I knew that it was always going to happen, but it just felt really surreal.
You did it.
Yeah.
Raya Kenny has been working on building a national memorial for half her life. It all started in 5th grade when she was tasked with thinking up a new memorial for Washington, D.C. You were 11 when you had the idea?
Yeah. I had just watched the film A League of Their Own, which is about the women baseball players who took over when the men went off to war. And I thought they were super cool sliding around the bases in their skirts. And I wanted to see what other jobs women were doing. That's when the idea clicked. A memorial for the women who worked on the home front during World War II. So she got to work. Here was a younger Raya showing off her new design.
Distinguished members of the committee.
And in 2019, she testified in front of Congress, pitching the idea.
This is not a quick or easy process, but it's an important one.
And finally, this year, Congress gave it the green light.
I got a text from a family friend that had gone through, and I was in the middle of a shift at work, and I said, "Excuse me for a second," and then I went upstairs to our gallery space and I cried happy tears of joy.
Wow, you cried.
I did cry. I have never cried from happiness like that before. It was really, it was such a relief, and it was so exciting, and it's just like the culmination of everything I'd worked for. The memorial was authorized in this year's omnibus spending bill, but Raya's work is far from over. She now needs to find a good spot for the memorial, somewhere in D.C., and she needs to fundraise because it's not being paid for by the federal government. When you were 17, I said to you in that interview, a lot of 10-year-olds are playing video games. You were out there trying to make change. Why? Now I'll say this, you're 20, most college students are like out drinking or doing whatever. You're trying to build a monument. Why? Why spend your time doing that? This is so important. There were 18 million civilian women who worked on the home front and completely changed the way that we view women in the workforce today. And so Raya keeps working. If all goes well, the memorial could be a reality within 7 years. What would you tell that 11-year-old as they started that process? You got this. You got this. You're gonna do it. It's gonna happen. And even when you don't know what you're doing, it's gonna work out. All right, I'll see you in 7 years. See you in 7 years. On the National Mall, I'm Evan Koslof, WUSA 9.